Hey, my name is Bobby, and I think that making documentaries is really hard work. You see this guy over here? This is my grandfather. We call him Dziadzi. When I found out that he wasn't doing too well, I grabbed my camera and I went over to him and I decided I was going to record all of the fun, interesting, and wild stories that he used to tell us growing up as grandkids. I figured I would make an entire documentary out of my footage. Boy, was I in over my head. Anyway, this is chapter 1 of this massive family history project I gave myself. And we're going to go ahead and get things started by getting to know the man himself. My grandfather, my Dziadzi.
What's that?
Can I ask you a couple questions?
You're going to ask me some serious questions.
Yeah, real serious.
Do I have to think about it?
Of course, of course.
Go ahead.
So, what's your full name?
My full name?
Yeah, your full name.
Okay. Robert Luke Ernest Obradovich.
My name in Polish is Ludzia or Ludzia, depending on the pronunciation. And in my family, I'm Ludge, which is the diminutive. And honestly, in my entire life, I never remember my mother calling me Loretta. It was always Ludge. And of course, if she said Ludzia, then you knew you had to pay attention. But I've always been Ludge within the whole family. These are big, mega Polish families. My nuclear family, okay, my older brother, Ronald Francis, my younger brother, Bruce Michael Benedict, he died at 17, and my mother was Stella Barzak, married Mike Myslinski, or Michael Myslinski.
How do you spell Ludzia?
L-O-D-Z-I-A.
Okay, and then Ludge for short, L-O-D-Z?
Ludge for short probably becomes L-U-D-Z.
L-U-D-Z.
Okay. Yeah. Dziadzi means grandfather.
Dziadzi means in Polish?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you spell Dziadzi?
D-Z-I-A-D-Z-I.
Do you remember what the first words he ever said to you was?
Hello, and he's smiling, looking at my legs. You know, with Bermuda, yeah. Well, you know, he was 30.
So what is your favorite thing about Dziadzi?
He has probably the most integrity of any person I've ever known, but he's a happy person, and he's got a great sense of humor. And as you know, he likes to tell stories. I call him the man of 2,000 stories. But once a year at least, I hear a story I've never heard before.
Really?
Well, he's had such an interesting life.
What is your favorite story?
Pepe El Macho,
Yep.
yeah.
That's one of my favorites too.
Pepe El Macho?
See?
When did I mention him to you?
What are you talking about? I've heard about Pepe El Macho from you.
Pepe El Macho.
And the dog?
He was a neighbor of ours in the mining business in Peru. Yeah, his name was Jesus Jose Maria. Jesus, Joseph, and Mary. That was it. He was baptized like that. Jesus Jose Maria, and his last name was Salazar. Spanish Salazar. And he was very friendly and everything like that. He had a drinking problem. He would get drunk quite often, and drunk silliness. But Pepe El Macho, he used to get into fist fights and stuff like that. And that's why he was nicknamed El Macho, macho male, the male, you know, for Pepe El Macho. And well, my dad gave me a dog, this puppy. He was all white with a few black spots on him. He looked just like the RCA Victor dog. Have you seen that, where the dog is looking into the microphone? We headed from the mine to the city of Huancavelica, and my brother and I are on the back of the truck, the regular truck, and we have bags of mineral. Well, it's all bagged up, the stuff from the mine. And then the driver and my mom and dad were in the cab with the driver. And we're pulling out of the mine, and here comes Pepe El Macho. He still waving, you know. "Hey, can you give me a ride to Huancavelica?" "Sure, here, hop, get up there, hop on top, get up on top, you know." So he gets up on top with us, with Martin and me, and I'm sitting there with my puppy, yeah, and with the door running around, and he says to me, "Bobby," he says to me, let me see your dog." So I, hand it to him, and he grabs the dog and oh, this dog is no good. And he criticizes him, and he threatens to throw him off the truck. Now, I did not understand that he was actually just pulling my leg, or playing around with me. I thought he was serious. I thought he was going to throw the dog off the truck. I got mad. And I said, "Give me my dog." And then he keeps on with the bullshit. My brother's at the other end of the truck, right there, at the back gate, watching this. So, and he said, "I'm going to, So what did I do? Oh, I hauled off and punched him. He was sitting there, and I give him my knife, pow! Of course, I was just a child, so it wasn't really a real, but I swung a real punch. And he said, "Oh, okay, don't get me, here's your dog. And he gives it back to me. My brother saw this and he says, "Oh my God, he's going to tell Dad, and Dad's going to be pissed off, like, Dad's going to really be angry, hitting the neighbor, a friend of ours, punching him like that." So anyhow, by the time we got, now, Pepe El Macho had a few drinks, but he wasn't really blotto drunk, but he had a few drinks to make him act silly, So anyhow, we get to Huancavelica, and he right in the middle of town, and he gets down and thanks my parents for the ride, and "Thank you for the ride," and so forth and so on. And then he says to my dad, he says, "Your younger son packs one heck of a wallet." I was 9 years old.
This is my Dziadzi. We used to call him Dziadzi growing up. Dziadzi is Polish for grandfather. So that's just what we always called him growing up, Dziadzi. And no one seems to know how to spell it. Boy, I tell you, Polish, what a language, does not translate well to English. Bunch of Z's everywhere. He was born in New York, specifically in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, to 2 Croatian immigrants. And when he was young, the whole family just up and moved to Peru, because you see, his father, my great-grandfather, Mateo, had these mine claims to these mineral and ore deposits in the mountains of Peru, in the literal mountains of Peru, like copper mines, silver mines. He was a kid when his entire family up and moved to Peru, started to learn Spanish, started to learn Quechua as well, which is the native Peruvian language, Native American Peruvian language. Eventually he would go to college back in the United States of America. He would get an engineering degree at Iowa State University. He was a Delta Chi there. Then he was in the United States Army. They stationed him in Germany after the end of World War II. And eventually he came back to Peru when he was a fully grown adult. And that's actually where he met my Polish grandmother, also born in the States. Ludge. Because he was an engineer, he moved around a lot, bringing Ludge, my grandmother and their eventual kids with them all over the place. Columbia, California, New Hampshire, Boise, Idaho, Virginia, just a bunch of places, really just all over the place, working on various different engineering projects.
Well, okay, this is an interesting story. My grandfather, my dad's father, used to pick up a few bucks now and then as a hunting guide. He was good at it. In those days, so people, Austrian nobility from Vienna, the dukes and the counts and stuff like that, they would seek him out to go hunting. And so on one occasion, this is what my dad told me this story. There was this guy going to go hunting and everything, but he was different from the counts and the dukes or the Austrian nobility guys. They were snobs, okay? This guy wasn't a snob, and he talking very nicely with all the people, and they're going to go hunting and so forth, and so that took a look at, oh wow, this guy's nice. So he asked somebody, he says, who is that?
Yeah.
Because he knew it wasn't the count or a duke or something like. And the guy says, he's an American businessman. So my dad was telling me this years later, right? When he was an American businessman himself. He said, he looked at that guy and he said, when I grow up, I'm going to be an American businessman. Whatever that is. So of course, he discovered that he would have to come to the States. So his dad took him into the city of Dubrovnik. Had a cousin also named Obradović, that had a hardware store in town. Okay, and he put his son there to work as an apprentice in the hardware store apprentice. And of course, clean things, polish everything, and take care of, and that's where he learned the business of a store.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hardware store. And so when he came to the States and eventually went into business for himself, he was just, he knew it all about how business works because of the apprenticeship in the hardware store. Dad, my father, and he was a heck of a good businessman. And Dad wasn't afraid of anything. Nothing shook him up, which is amazing, really amazing. When I was getting drafted into the U.S. Army, he said, son, stick with the big guns, the cannons. Stick with the big guns. The draftees just got whatever that was handy for them, and mostly infantry, which is very good training. Very good training.
My name is Jessica Ann Obradović Pearson. I was born in Goshen, New York. My parents are Bob and Loretta Obradović. My dad is Robert Luke, and my mom is Loretta Mary Helen Mislinski Obradović. Well, that's really interesting. So I do distinctly remember him. So my mom stayed home with us, and I remember him working. And when we lived in New Hampshire, he would come home from work, and sometimes we'd be running around in the yard, and he used to pick us up and like throw us up in the air. So I remember him as just being a lot of fun and telling a lot of stories, and hearing about his family, and both of my parents are, so my dad's family is Croatian and my mom's family is Polish. So we had a lot of like special family traditions that were maybe different than other kids, but we'd make special meals, and so those are some of my best memories. And also, my parents teaching us prayers and words in Hrvatski and also in Polish. Probably taking us to the library. So when we lived in New Hampshire, she would take us to, I'm pretty sure this was before I was in elementary school. She would take us to the library, and they had this big children's section that was had a bunch of white shelving. It was filled with natural light, and I just remember being there for hours and hours. She was always taking us to places like the library. I remember her asking us to help her in her garden. And again, these are all memories from New Hampshire. So yeah, she was a really terrific influence in that regard. She was always reading, and she would let us get stacks of books at the library. What inspired me to become an architect is when I was probably 8 years old, my parents took us on a family vacation to New York City. And we visited a lot of interesting places, as tourists do when you go to New York. And we happened to visit the Guggenheim. And I remember as a child walking in and entering the central atrium and just looking up and seeing just natural light streaming down, seeing the galleries spiraling above. And my dad realized that I was, really caught up in that moment of experiencing this beautiful piece of architecture. And he said, well, did you know that an architect designed this building? And I said, well, in that case, I want to be an architect. And he took me to the gift shop, and he bought me this really beautiful poster, which was like a sectional rendering of the Guggenheim. I still have it to this day. And my dad encouraged me to draw. He encouraged me to be good at math. And we had a natural affinity for that because of his civil engineering profession. So yeah, that trip to New York and my dad taking notice of my reaction to the building, that's what cemented it for me. And I'm really, really happy that that's the way it worked out. He still to this day refers to me as my daughter who is an architect. So when my dad worked on the Monitor Merrimack Bridge Tunnel, he was like in a supervisory position. And in construction, the people who are supervisors wear white construction hats, and everybody else wears different colored hats, sometimes to indicate what their trade is. And so many years later, I worked in construction, and I worked on the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. That was a project where there was an existing set of bridges and tunnels, and it was being expanded to have more lanes to better handle the traffic, and also for safety reasons, because the bridges had one-way traffic in 2 lanes. It was very dangerous, and there had been lots of accidents. So anyway, I was working on that project, and it was right after I graduated from college, so it was probably 1998, and at that point, my name was still Jessica Obradovic. And while I was working there, a carpenter named Mike, came up to me and said, Obradovic. He's like, that's such an unusual name. Do you happen to know a Bob Obradovic? And I said, well, yeah, of course, it's my dad. And he proceeded to tell me that he was like, oh, your dad is such a great guy. I worked as a carpenter on the Monitor Merrimack Bridge Tunnel, and there were some complicated concrete forms that I had to build, and I was having trouble with it. And your dad drew me some very beautiful 3-dimensional drawings that I could use as a guide to build my formwork. And he said, I still have those drawings. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. I'm like, why don't you come over and meet my dad? And so he did. Several, weeks later, came over for a beer, and we hung out in the backyard and just talked. And it was so nice to hear, this sort of like third party opinion of what a great guy my dad is. And it didn't surprise me at all that my dad had been so kind to him and treated him, with thoughtfulness and helped him do his job. My dad he's very smart, but he's also really thoughtful. Like, he wants to teach people. He wants people to learn. And and I'm just really proud of just that situation happened, and that I was able to find out about it. Because my dad's not the kind of person who would come home and say, oh, today at work I drew some drawings and helped a carpenter figure out how to build this complicated formwork. But that's just who he is. So it's a really great memory that I have.
So when he went to see his mother, I'm traveling in a few days, and so she knew they had. So she took the money and took his pants and made a slit in the pants here and stitched the $25 and the few coins that they were in his pants. And said, "Don't take your pants off." That was not to lose them, not to lose it.
And he never did.
He had $25. Didn't take him all. Well, he had to spend time on Ellis Island, and the authorities checked up on his. They actually invited his sponsor to Ellis Island to interview him in the presence of my father, and they say it was very interesting. They treated everybody, you hear stories about Ellis Island and nasty guards and stuff. That's it. God, they treated us beautifully. He came over on the Lusitania.
Oh, the Lusitania.
Lusitania.
The Lusitania?
Lusitania. The British ship, the Lus is like Lusitania, the light ship, the lit up ship.
What year was that?
1912. You learned something from Ellis Island. A few years later, I was with my daughter Anna.
Yeah.
And we went downtown and then took the boat over to Ellis Island. It was opened as a museum, no longer for the immigrants. They came in directly into the airports and whatnot. But so we got off the boat, and we started walking in. And the gates, the doors were open, and we're going in. And I said to Anna, I says, in 1912, your grandfather went through these doors.
Nice.
Yeah. Immigrants from Europe.
The guy actually wanted to have 7 sons, 7 different boys running around his house. And that to me is wild. It reminds me so much of my favorite musical, which my grandfather actually introduced me to, which is 7 Brides for 7 Brothers. A musical in which this guy who lives on a farm goes into town to find himself a wife, they get married, and then he brings her back home to his farm, where she finds out that he is one of 7 brothers, and there is literally no women in sight. They live like pigs, a bunch of rowdy, stinky, dirty farm boys. And I can't believe that my grandfather watched this musical and was like, yep, I want that. That's what I want. I want to create that. 7 sons. That's what he wanted. You know what he got? God said, oh, what? You want 7 sons? That's a tall order. Yeah, I'll see what we can do for you. How about 4 daughters. Yeah, 4 daughters. Pack that shit up, bro. You're not getting any sons. No matter how many times you try, you will not get a boy. You will not do it. It will not happen. It is not in the cards. Bro, what were you thinking? That to me is actually hilarious. This guy legitimately wanted his wife to produce 7 sons. Grandfather, you kind of kooky for that one. That's kind of wild. That's pretty kooky, not gonna lie. Guy wanted to have 7 sons and he got 4 daughters. The farthest possible thing he could have gotten from what he asked for before his wife, my grandmother, was like, I'm done. I literally cannot do this anymore at all, whatsoever. It has been like 50 months and I have produced 4 children. We are gonna give up right here, right now. I cannot do it. I refuse to go on. No more kids. We gotta do something else. We gotta do something different. We gotta get really into reading or watching movies or something. You need to stay away from me.
What is the age difference between them all? They're all in order from youngest to oldest?
We had
roughly?
4 children in 54 months.
However, on one occasion, I had a couple of drinks. There was a series of armored personnel carrying tracks. In other words, they weren't tanks, but they had the tracks, and the personnel was inside there and hidden, and there was a guy out there with a machine gun, and they'd go in to attack. The door would open, and the infantry would come running out, that kind of stuff. Well, I had a couple of drinks, and I was at the fence peeing. And the armored personnel carriers were 3 or 4 of them over there. I finished peeing, went through the fence, and I went up there. And these things don't have keys or anything. You just start them, And I got in, started it, backed out, and then drove all around the place. And then while I'm doing this, I hit a pole. The fence was like this, and I hit that pole, and the pole went, and then, now, when I took it, they were all parked this way. When I took it in there, I backed it in. So it was different than the rest. And everybody, the 2 or 3 guys that saw me do that to the fence, they kept their mouths shut and all that. So a couple of days later, 2 or 3 days later, the company commander was out there, and he's looking around, and he sees that one truck backwards. So he comes into the office, into my office, and he says, tells me, call transportation, tell them that thing's backwards and all that kind of stuff. And he said, and call the post engineers and have them fix that thing that's busted. Yes, sir. And I took care of all that. Oh, hey guys, So I didn't get caught for causing all that stuff. I could have been punished. The company commander said to me, "You tell those guys from engineers to really put up a good post there. That post that you give them an ass chewing." Yes, sir. No.
Oh, the Falabogo?
Yeah. Can you explain that to me and what it means?
My dad taught us this prayer when we were children, and I'm struggling to remember all the parts of it, but I think it's the Hrvatski language. I think it's the Lord's Prayer, the Our Father who art in heaven, the prayer that Jesus teaches his disciples in the Bible. So I think that's what it is. All I can remember is Fala Bogo, Prejidanek, I dalazi slakisanek, Priu Lego Negum Spach, Tamni Hochis Bejaswati. That's all I can remember. I can't remember much more.
I think that was it.
That was it? Okay.
That was definitely it. Yeah, no, I was, as you were saying, yeah, I was like remembering those exact
Yeah.
sounds, yeah. Do you remember that Horvesky prayer that you taught all of your grandkids?
Do I remember all who? All my grandkids?
There's a Horvesky prayer that you taught to all of your grandkids. Do you remember it?
I'm not sure.
It's a prayer.
I'm not sure. I don't. A prayer for my grandchildren.
In Horvesky? Or is Horvesky, is that Croatian?
Yes, Hrvatski. Hrvatski. Do I remember a Croatian prayer for my kids,
Yeah.
for my children?
Yeah.
I would have to do some real hard thinking.
The end. I remember part of it. The ending was, it went like this. Legum spaci I ope sunt sasina. Legum spaci I api sunt sasina.
I'm not sure.
Debi hocho legum spaci.
Legum spati. Yeah, legum spati when I lay down to sleep.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
legum spati. Tebi hochu Bože zvati.
Yeah.
Tebi hochu. You, Lord, I want to call upon. When I lay down to sleep. Tebi Bože. Bože is God. You, God. Tebi Bože. Tebi Bože mogu shvati, says, I dolazi slatki sanak,
I doze
I ja njega legom spati, tebi hoću Bože zvati. Zvati, I want to call upon. Tebi hoću Bože zvati. You, Lord, I wish to call upon. Yeah, tebi Bože zvati. Daj mi svaka bjedamin. Give me a good bjedamin. I don't know what bjedamin is. Probably a good sleep. I opet sunce sine. And again, the sun rising.
And again,
Make my night complete. Make it sun rising. Yeah, they're very nice. Croatian. It's prayed in Croatian. Croatian prayer. Tebi hoću Bože nadames. I opet sunce sine. And again to see the sunshine. Hey, nice, huh?
Very nice.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm glad I remember part of it. You taught that to me and my sister and my cousins.
Uh-huh. Well, my ass is aching from sitting so long, so I'm going to stand up.
Good deal.
Oh,
Good deal.
ugh.